Hi, welcome everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to another informative episode of CT Talks. I'm your co-host Laura Estrada Adams, Communications and Outreach Coordinator for the Division of Human Resources in Sacramento. We're so excited to bring you episode 15 on tribal partnerships and environmental stewardship. We want to take a moment to express our gratitude to all of our viewers for your ongoing support of CT Talks webinars. We couldn't do this without you all, and we're so happy that you're tuning in today. For those who may need to leave early, don't worry. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with the recorded link, so keep an eye out for that. As we get rolling with the conversation, we encourage you to engage with us by asking questions in the chat, and we will be passing those along to our expert panel. And don't forget to show your emoji love and support of our panelists. And next with this, I'm going to hand it over to her for her introduction.
Thank you, Laura. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this really exciting episode. We're really thrilled to bring you this content today. We have four incredibly passionate and informative individuals here to chat with. So we're looking forward to a really fruitful discussion. So as Laura said, drop the emoji love. It looks like people are already getting really active with it. But today we're happy to bring you episode 15. And so what can you expect today? Those of you that are maybe new to CT Talks, or you repeat offenders, you already know the drill. So we're going to be talking to our four panelists today. You will also have your chance to ask your burning questions. So as Laura said, throw your questions in the chat at any point, and we'll be breaking in between our questions to get to you. So CT Talks is here to bring you insightful conversations with the people of Caltrans and really interesting topics. So we're really excited for this one, and we hope you are too. So before we kick off, we are going to introduce you to our four individuals. You may have seen this from some of the graphics, but we've got David Price, Dana Kota, Cassandra Hensha, and Sarah Allred. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Say nice hi to be here. Or wave, anything you'd like. So with that, I'll kick it to Laura to introduce us all to David.
Pleasure to introduce David Price. David began his career in archaeology in 2002 when he was recruited to dig holes through old asphalt with a breaker bar on the Central Coast. In 2011, he graduated from Fresno State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology with a focus on archaeology. And in 2016, earned a Master of Arts in Cultural Resource Management from Sonoma State University. In the intervening years, David has worked throughout the state of California and parts of Oregon and Nevada on archaeological projects of every stripe. David started at Caltrans in 2015, working for the North Region on the Willits Bypass project. In 2017, he moved to the Cultural Studies Office in Caltrans headquarters to conduct quality assurance reviews of Caltrans district technical documents prepared in compliance with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. He has since taken on increasing responsibilities at headquarters, and in May of this year accepted the role of Chief of the Cultural Studies Office, overseeing the department's statewide compliance with all applicable state and federal cultural resource laws and directives. Thank you for joining us today, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
All right, and I have the great pleasure of introducing Dana Kota. So Dana L. Kota recently joined the Division of Local Assistance, Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach, where she works on projects statewide. Prior to that, she served as the Broadband North Region Native American Coordinator, and earlier this year completed a senior rotation as the Native American Cultural Studies Branch Chief at headquarters in Sacramento. Before joining Caltrans in 2000, Dana worked as a contractor in Caltrans headquarters, assisting in the planning and implementation of the Advanced Mitigation Program. Dana graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's in anthropology and a concentration in environmental sustainability from Southern New Hampshire University, Manchester in 2018. She is currently pursuing her master's degree in environmental science and a certificate in fire ecology, management, and technology at the University of Idaho, Moscow. Thank you for being here with us today, Dana. We're really excited to hear more about your experience and learn from you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So next I have the pleasure of introducing you to Cassandra Hensha. Cassandra is an archaeologist and Native American coordinator in the Caltrans District 2 Reading Office of Local Assistance, overseeing local agency compliance on the Federal Highway Administration funded project. Cassandra has worked 23 years at Caltrans, plus 11 years as an archaeologist, cultural resources manager in the private sector, and for the federal and state government. Cassandra's career at Caltrans has included District 6 and 10, with the last 18 years in District 2. Cassandra is a member of the Kuruk tribe, located in the northwestern California area. She was raised in a remote off-grid community deep in the tribe's ancestral territory of the Salmon Mountains. While studying at Humboldt State University, Cassandra was initially interested in Latin American archaeology. While studying Spanish in Oaxaca, Mexico, and visiting large indigenous temples and ruins, she would get very excited whenever she found the small flakes of obsidian that are commonly found throughout California. That experience, combined with the teachings of her tribal elders, made her realize she actually wanted to focus on the heritage of her people, and she changed her specialty to California Native American archaeology. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cassandra.
Be here, and I appreciate the invitation.
All right, and last but certainly not least, I have the pleasure of introducing Sarah Allred. So Sarah is the statewide Native American coordinator in Caltrans Headquarters Division of Environmental Analysis, Cultural Studies Office. Sarah works on policies and programs related to the department's outreach and consultation responsibilities with Native American tribes during transportation development. Sarah is an archaeologist and cultural resources specialist, and a graduate of the California State University, Sacramento, with a degree in anthropology. Sarah has worked in the field of cultural resources management and environmental transportation planning in both the private sector and in state service for over 30 years. As the Caltrans statewide Native American coordinator, Sarah coordinates and collaborates with the 12 districts of Caltrans, tribal governments, and other stakeholders and partners throughout California to ensure the proper consideration and treatment of important tribal heritage sites and environmental resources in transportation. Welcome, Sarah. We're so excited to have you here.
To be here.
All right. And before we get started with our questions, our panelists had sent in a few images. So we wanted to give you a little insight into their world as tribal partners here at Caltrans. And so let's kick us off with a little video. I'm just going to test, make sure everyone can hear my audio. Oh, here we go. All right, so just a little taste of what we're in for today. So Laura, I'll kick it over to you to get us started with our question.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to start off with Dana. We just read your bios a bit. Of course, you can tell us more, please, about your cultural resource professional that you consider yourself, and how did you get into it?
I definitely consider myself, first and foremost, an anthropologist as much as an archaeologist because I really do enjoy being in the field of people. And I started out not even realizing initially that Caltrans used archaeologists. And I had worked for 30 plus years working with Caltrans design side in the building of our transportation infrastructure. And when I found out that they actually use archaeologists, I thought, well, being that we live in the state of California, which was admitted into the Union as a free state, I know that I couldn't use this education to work on behalf of the slave trade. So I'm like, well, that history's out. Well, where else can I use all of this to benefit another group of people who have a traditional history of having been an oppressed people? Where can I use this to be a benefit, to try and be part of a solution? And I thought, ha, I know where I can work. And I started learning more about where I could do this in a capacity that would make a real difference. And I started working with our tribal partners, and I realized that we share something very deeply important to me, which is a common philosophy on environmental stewardship and preserving and safeguarding not just cultural heritage, but also the environment. And to me, it was just a perfect mix. And I fell in love with what I'm doing. And so I consider myself like this vagabond bohemian woman who loves the environment, who loves working with our tribal entities, and I want to safeguard all of that. And I want to be part of a lasting, meaningful solution. And so I see myself as at Caltrans as being able to do that through the mechanisms that Caltrans has in place. I'm kind of living my dream. So that's where I fit into this perfect niche.
I love that. Thanks for sharing your passion, Dana. I want to hear from everybody else here on the panel as well. Can you share a little bit more with the same question here? Anybody want to go next? All right.
I think like a lot of us in this panel here, I started as an archaeologist, but I would consider myself more of a cultural resource manager now. I think it's interesting that Dana says she considers herself as an anthropologist. I think we all working for the state kind of have this same conundrum where we started with archaeology and have expanded. But so I started as archaeology, as an archaeologist, working in the private side for a private consultant. You know, I was doing archaeology. Archaeology is really concerned with material culture, answering questions about, you know, people's past through material culture research. And I did a lot of that. I even did archaeological work for Caltrans as a consultant. But then coming to Caltrans, you know, or really working at any other government agency, you expand that beyond just archaeology. Generally, you know, agencies are more concerned with compliance with the law with various cultural resource laws, and a lot of those laws are concerned with all types of cultural resources. And most of the time, even more importantly, they're concerned with the people that care about those cultural resources, how it impacts those people. So that's why I consider myself more of a cultural resource manager now that I work for the agency, because it's not just focused on archaeology, but there's not really a universal term. So I'm interested to hear the rest of the panel and how they kind of answer this question as well.
I'd like to go next. Well, Sarah, you want to go next and share your insights?
Sure, why not? Yeah, so similar to David, you know, my degree is also in anthropology with an emphasis in California archaeology and California Native American studies. I initially began my career in the private sector as an archaeologist, worked for a number of environmental and cultural resource management consulting firms, and after about 8 years in private consulting, I started my civil service career at Caltrans, where much of the work is oriented around compliance with environmental and historic preservation laws involved in delivering transportation infrastructure. You know, when I worked in the private sector, I was involved in a number of transportation projects in a consultant capacity, where we assisted Caltrans in complying with historic preservation and environmental regulatory requirements. But when I was in school studying anthropology and archaeology, I had not imagined working for a state agency, let alone Caltrans, as an archaeologist or a cultural resource specialist. But, you know, I'm grateful to have landed at Caltrans and in the transportation sector specifically, which is a fascinating sector to work in. And it's actually been a privilege to be able to do this work in coordination with so many dedicated environmental colleagues, tribal leaders and representatives, and you know, internal, external partners to try to solve environmental and transportation problems in the public interest.
Sarah? All right, Cassandra, so you're next.
Thank you. So I view myself, I mean, I have the same background with the education in anthropology and archaeology, but as a tribal person, a tribal member doing archaeology, there aren't that many of us. So that is kind of rare, but becoming more common. So I'm glad about that. So I view my role, a big part of it is to be bringing that tribal perspective into archaeology because a lot of archaeologists they spend a lot of time specializing in the material culture. That's the definition of archaeology, right? The material culture of peoples of the past. But up until very recently, not many archaeologists spent a lot of time with living Native American people. So for me, having all that background already, that perspective is what I want to bring to the field, and also to be a bridge between the government and between archaeologists and tribes and tribal people. Um, I I feel like it's not my role as a government employee in doing our consultation with tribes. It's not my role to impose my view of what should happen, but to be a good conduit, a good bridge between the tribes that we're working with and the government role. You know, bringing them together and having that tribe or those tribes be able to express what they would like to see go on, and that's what I really like to do. You know?
Yeah, thank you. I really love just hearing how you guys are focusing on the people first and just trying to collaborate and partner with the tribes. So important. And just bringing all your experience and education to that. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Harriet for the next question.
All right, thank you, Laura. So next question, I'm going to go to David. So what exactly do you do? You all obviously have a plethora of experience and education and passion for this work, but what is it that you do contributing to Caltrans in this field?
It requires a little bit of background, actually, if you don't mind me providing some.
Absolutely.
I wanted to start saying Caltrans, we're a big organization. We have a lot of functional programs that engage with tribes over a number of subjects, you know, that intersect with transportation. So, you know, we engage for planning, grants, other forms of partnering. What I do, however, is related to project delivery. So one of the most expansive programs of tribal engagement in Caltrans is compliance with cultural resource laws that are a part of project delivery. So whenever Caltrans builds or even funds transportation projects or related actions for transportation, there's a big suite of environmental laws that we have to satisfy as part of the development and construction of the project. And cultural resource laws are a big part of that suite of environmental laws. And so I'm the chief of the Cultural Studies Office here at Caltrans. So I'm in headquarters in the Division of Environmental Analysis, which is part of the project delivery program in headquarters. So my office develops and oversees the policies and the best practices and the specialized trainings that ensure, you know, that we satisfy those laws statewide. We provide those policies and those best practices for the districts. We have a large program across the state in each district that goes out and actually does the work that's necessary for compliance with those laws. And I want to nod. We're you know, we've got to focus here on our tribal engagement because it's Native American Heritage Month. We don't only focus on cultural resources that are related to Native Americans, but tribes have a special status. They have a long history here as part of peoples of the land, and so they're rightly a big focus of the compliance process that we do here. I think that's a pretty good stopping point. I oversee the office that engages in development of policy, best practices, and training, basically to make sure we comply with those laws.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that gives us a good overview. So well done. You did it in a concise manner.
Oh.
So interesting. You're kind of setting the new standard for how we move forward in transportation. That's really, really fantastic. Cassandra, same question to you. What is it that you do exactly?
So working in the District 2 in the Reading office, I'm right now in the Office of Local Assistance. I used to work for the Capital Outlay Support and Project Delivery office in a similar role, but in the Office of Local Assistance, what I really do is I oversee the studies that the local agencies are doing when they get those federal funds to work on their roads and bridges. then they need to do the same studies to comply with the federal regulations. And so I'm overseeing that work. I'm helping the local agencies and reviewing their consultant studies, but also ensuring that that tribal consultation is done, whether it's a consultant, the local agency doing it, or if I need to assist, I'll do that because again, it's tribal consultation. It shouldn't be a specialty, but it kind of is still. So tribes are really complex. There's a lot to know, a lot to learn, and it just takes time. And if individuals or agencies haven't spent that time yet, I can help guide them, let them know which tribes to work with, who the contacts are, what the appropriate approach is, how to start, how to address any concerns that come up. So that's what I do.
Awesome. I'm sure you're an expert in that. Being native yourself, it must give you that extra kind of insight to approaching these topics as well.
Yeah, I make mistakes too, though. And the one thing tribes most appreciate, or one of many, is humility and just being able to admit if you made a mistake. So I've gotten good at that.
That's awesome. Always helps. Always helps. Dana, same question to you. What exactly that you do here at Caltrans?
Actually, I'm very fortunate that I get to follow Cassandra's answer because I do very similar work to what she does. I'm very new in local assistance, so I will be taking a lot of cues from Cassandra. I do very similar work to what she does, except I do it instead of being confined to a particular geographic region. I now am responsible for a statewide local assistance program. So I will be working with state agencies or local agencies all over the state and providing that oversight and assistance with the 106 consultation process, as well as being responsible for training them on how to do it or stepping in and assisting when there is a need and training internally as well as externally. And this will be the first time since I was pinch hitting for Sarah for a little bit as the cultural studies branch chief, that I'm not going to be confined to the 22 counties that comprise North Region. And I will be privy to being able to work all over the state wherever it's needed. So I'm very excited about that and looking forward to the opportunity to kind of stretch my legs and be able to provide that service throughout the entire state of California. So, Cassandra, trust me, I will be calling on you a lot. I look at her as one of the experts in doing this, not just because she is Karuk, but because I've worked with her for a number of years and respect the quality of the work she does and the sound advice I've always gotten from her on doing this. So I look to the expert in helping me achieve this goal for local assistance.
And I love working with you, Dana. So I look forward to it.
Oh, you're so sweet.
So a lot of collaboration, then, Dana, because you were in charge of kind of the North Region vicinity, and then now having that enterprise-wide reach. That's going to be really interesting, and just being able to have bigger impact and bigger partnerships, right?
And I've always been able to count on really quality district Native American coordinators all over, and it's just an opportunity to get to know the rest of them.
Awesome. Really glad you got this opportunity, and thrilled to hear more about your work as you contribute. Sarah, same question to you. What do you do here?
I am also with David in the headquarters Division of Environmental Analysis. So I'm the branch chief for the Native American Cultural Studies branch, which is housed in headquarters Cultural Studies office. So I work on statewide programs and policies related to the department's tribal consultation responsibilities in the context of transportation development. And I provide guidance, assistance, and training to the district cultural resources staff and the district Native American coordinators. And I also lead and administer the statewide cultural studies subcommittee to the director's Native American Advisory Committee, which convenes California tribes throughout the state to kind of work on policies and issues related to environmental and cultural heritage protection and tribal involvement in our transportation process.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear all these partnerships that are in existence, right? Committees, advisory boards. It's really all about communication and education, right? So you all are doing so much, and evidently, all of our department is a big partnership, right, to contribute to a shared vision. So that's fantastic, fantastic. Laura, I'll kick it to you for our next question.
All right. So just a quick reminder before we go to the next question, if you have any questions, please add those in the chat, pass those along to the panelists. So feel free to do that anytime. So David, I'm going to start with you. So we want to hear about a proud moment or something that like accomplishment that you're particularly proud of. What would you have to say?
Oh, it's a great question. So actually, I want to work back. Dana mentioned 106. I did not go into any of the specific laws that we actually comply with as part of our program here. Section 106 of the National Register of Historic the National Historic Preservation Act. I should know that one off the tip of my tongue. Is one of the main law that we comply with as part of Project Delivery, and it's a huge directive to engage with tribes as part of Project Delivery. So we might fall back on saying 106 or Section 106, something like that. We're referring to that because it is a big driver of our tribal engagement during Project Delivery. So just in case, I'll try not to, but a lot of it falls back onto those kinds of onto that kind of compliance. And so you asked something I'm proud of. I'll try not to gush too much, not because I'm proud, but I wanted to start saying I'm really proud to work at Caltrans because of the leadership and their vision towards tribal engagement to begin with. We really have gotten a directive, working as a state department in a way that has to engage with tribes in a lot of ways. Our leadership has really given us directives to ensure that those processes work and improve. There's naturally a lot of walls to working with any group outside of a government agency, not just tribes, any aspect of the public. Getting anything done tends to come with problems to solve. And it's no different for tribal engagement in all the functions that Caltrans fulfills. Our leadership really has identified that and shown willingness and drive to break down walls and given us the directives to do what we need to do to break those down. So whenever we go into any discussions or anything like that that need problem solving or that need new guidance or anything like that, I know we have the backing of our leadership to do it, and it really makes me proud to work for this organization. So I really wanted to start with that because I think it's important to note, and I think it would be great for other folks if they wanted to come do the same thing. But I think something I'm proud of right now, it's quite salient. So I had said Section 106. We have an agreement with our regulatory agencies that make sure we follow the law that specifies how we fulfill that law. And over the last 2 years, my office has been renegotiating that agreement with our regulatory agencies. And that agreement in the past has really focused heavily on archaeology. And this is understandable. A lot of the people that come and work in cultural resources management, for state departments start as archaeologists. And a lot of the laws that we deal with easily translate to archaeology, even if they weren't originally written for archaeology. But because of that, the original agreements really focused on archaeology. And it wasn't meant to just highlight archaeology, but that was what was on most people's minds when these agreements were written. But that's been changing lately, and the law that we follow wasn't directed at archaeology. And so what we've been doing over the last 2 years is really rewriting this agreement with a large eye towards ensuring that it, instead of uplifting archaeology, that it really puts it puts people at the same level. It evens out the focus of the process to not just focus on archaeology, but to focus on the people that find cultural resources significant. So instead of having language in there that focuses on archaeology, we really focus on what makes these things significant to people. And there's a large motivation to do that because of tribal interaction with that agreement, with the way that we use that agreement, especially when we're talking about Native American cultural resources. So we've been working to ensure that instead of focusing on archaeology, which has a long and hairy past that I'm sure we'll discuss, that we can ensure that we follow the laws by focusing on how cultural resources of importance to Native Americans and other descendant communities is taken into account during our project delivery and during our construction, as opposed to, say, just focusing on archaeology. And this has been a big effort, and I'm confident we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I'm really confident that it's going to lead to a better outcome when we engage with tribes as part of, this Section 106 as part of our environmental compliance. It leads to an outcome that is better for all the people involved, especially Native Americans.
Yeah, I love that. Just hearing that, just, part of interviewing you all and just working with you on this, just hearing that, like you mentioned, rewriting that policy to put the people first and making sure that they are in collaboration and communicating with all along with the incredible work that you guys are doing. Very important. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so I'm going to head over to Dana next. Dana, how about yourself? What would you like to share as a proud moment?
Actually, I was going to chime in and say, even though I can take no personal responsibility for it, I was tickled pink to see that in the new programmatic agreement, I didn't use an acronym, that there was a de-emphasis on cultural site, I mean, a de-emphasis on archaeological sites and more on cultural sites. An archaeological site is just stuff we find, but a cultural site is a site that may have nothing to do with archaeological, but it has to do with the spiritual, historical, and cultural meaning associated with the people at that site and what it means to them. And I was so thrilled to see that shift. But I can't even claim credit for it. So kudos to the people who did the writing. But for me personally, lately I've been very involved with things both at work and outside of work. And I'm very pleased to finally be involved with things that means something to me. And I've been working a lot more with Assemblyman James Ramos, and I was tickled to be personally invited. He said to my face, yes, I would like it if you marched in California's or Sacramento's very first Native American Heritage Month parade. As you know, Laura, I was there, I marched, and it was a huge deal to be that involved. And I look forward to continuing those types of activities that mean something to me. And I was thinking back on how much I've grown as a result of all that I've experienced over the last few years being involved with my work here at Caltrans that have truly, I think, made me a more well-rounded individual. It's a personal growth that people can't look at you and see, but on the inside, I know that I'm better. And I know that for all that I've grown and experienced and I've been transformed. And I know that when I go to meet my maker, I think that he will say, well done, thy good and faithful servant, because of the changes I've undergone. And it's something you can't put a monetary value on. It's just something I feel, and I feel good about those changes. And I love sharing how this type of work does truly change you and it opens your eyes and it makes you very aware of your surroundings. And it gives you empathy and sympathy that it's hard to even talk about. I never thought that I would be standing at an archaeological dig and pull something out of the ground that moved me to tears. And the first thing I thought was, where's the tribal elder who was just standing here? He must see this before anyone else. And to put it in his hands, we both started to cry. And the repatriation ceremony at the end had everyone crying, and it was so moving to me. I literally am not the same person. And that to me is a life changing growth moment that is probably one of the most proud things I've had to face in my life. The growth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing, Dana, just sharing just that experience of that, how you take the passion and love for the work that you're doing and you're taking it outside of work on your free time, trying to get involved with the communities and be an ally and just a huge advocate for those communities. And I believe that those communities see that when they meet you. Anybody sees that in the passion that you bring to that. So very, very touching, very moving, as you said. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you
Uh,
for asking. A lot of people
yeah.
in my own personal community have said, you don't show up this much for NAACP stuff. That is what being a true anthropologist is. Cultural relativism teaches us that no culture is any more or less significant. They're all important. I don't need to show up for Black
Absolutely.
events only. I can show up for anyone's event and be just as heartfelt and passionate.
Absolutely. Love that. Gosh, okay, so next we're gonna have to head over to, how about Sarah? How about for you? What's a problem for you?
So what? I have to follow Dana.
I know.
All right, just along the lines of just the importance of working with people. I mentioned earlier that I lead the statewide cultural studies subcommittee to the Director's Native American Advisory Committee. And prior to 2020, that subcommittee didn't exist, but in response to tribal concerns raised about cultural and environmental issues, I was able to advocate for and launch this subcommittee in 2020. And since that time, tribal membership in the subcommittee has grown statewide, and it continues to meet on a quarterly basis. And because of it, we've really been able to make progress and advance on policy issues around tribal environmental and cultural resources protections in transportation, as well as tribal involvement in that transportation process. So I'll keep it short and brief, but that's one thing I'm particularly happy about.
Thank you, Sarah. Absolutely, Dana's over there cheering for you. Yeah. How about for you, Cassandra? What would you like to share as a problem for you?
Mine is not necessarily a moment, but it goes back to my role. And I'm just proud of being able to be fully honest, fully transparent, and fully forthright with tribes. I think everyone here on this webinar knows that for hundreds and hundreds of years, the government wasn't always honest and forthright with tribes. The government has a history of being pretty deceitful with tribes. Starting with genocide as the actual goal, and that went on for a long time, and then moving through a lot of other programs that equated to genocide. Trying to remove their culture that's the same as genocide, because there are no people without a culture. All peoples have cultures, so if you take away their culture, then those people don't exist anymore. They become different people. So I most of all, I do the hard part of the job, and I'm proud of that. That if there's something difficult to talk about with tribes, I do it. It doesn't mean it's easy, but I do it because that is what I take pride in, is giving them the justice that they deserve by working with them honestly, and and telling them bad news if I have bad news. A lot of people, they shy away. They don't want to be in confrontation, right? They don't want to give people bad news, so they sugarcoat it. And it's just, that's not fair to tribes, right? Just telling them what needs to be said is what's fair. And so that's what I'm proud of, is just doing the job in a way that is most respectful of tribes, and that's what I'm proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, just, being truthful and transparent with the tribes, given the history with the government, and just being a Caltrans representative, going out there and trying to make things right and trying to create those good partnerships with them. Very important work. And it's very evident that everybody here on the panel is so passionate about the work that you're doing. So yeah, we're just super honored to have you guys on the webinar today. It's so informative for everybody listening. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Harriet.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat. We've had a few questions coming in. If anyone wants to take this one, what are some challenges when engaging with local tribes? Have there been any challenges you will have experienced? Would anyone like to take that?
Well, I'll be happy to start. And it stems a lot from what Cassandra was saying, that there's been such a history of things going very, very wrong, and it's systemic from distrust. And early on, when we initially discussed things with the tribe, because they have been wronged and been misled and lied to in the past, there's sometimes barriers that are up that we have to break down before we can really make headway. And the one good thing is, though, I always approach my meetings with them with the truth the facts and sincerity. And I think they can detect that. They have really good BS detectors that can sense when you're not telling the truth, you're not being sincere, and you're not giving them the whole story. So by giving as much information as possible, I can help break down that wall. And then we can really start working towards a solution. And I've been able to establish really good working relationships that could have gone contentiously or not gone so well. But I do find that sometimes I initially have to gain the trust and I have to gain the respect by just being a truthful, honest, forthright person who's presenting as much information as I can and keeping the lines of communication open when I learn something new, when a project has changed, when a deadline is not going to be met, or when there's any type of hiccup whatsoever. The best thing you can do is to call your tribal partner and let them know so that they stay informed. No one likes to be blindsided with anything. And those things really do help keep the relationship strong. And you find out later that those things work so well that even when they have a project that's not yours, that they feel comfortable enough to call you and say,
Mm.
I know it's not yours, but can you help? And the best thing is to be able to say, yeah, you're right, it's not mine. And yes, I still will help because this relationship is more important than whether or not it's my project.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I feel like all of you have touched on these elements, but it kind of goes back to I think what David said earlier. It's becoming less about archaeology with the policies in place and more about the people. And it's evident that the people aspect of all of your roles is such a priority. You mentioned Dana building trust. There's been a history which comes along with us just being generalized, being government employees, right? So it's a difficult job, I'm sure, and you're rocking it from the sounds of it. So well done, well done. Any other challenges anyone else wants to share? Yeah, Cassandra.
Yeah, I will. I can think of two pretty common challenges. One is just understanding how to work with any particular tribe. Every tribe, like I said, is really unique. So it takes some time to get to know them and understand their structure. Every tribe has a different governmental structure. And whether or not you're working with a tribe that's recognized by the federal government or not recognized by the federal government, there are some differences there. And so you need to reach out, connect with them, understand them, and learn how they want to be worked with, consulted. Each one is different, so that's a challenge because there are over 100 tribes in the state of California. So, and then another challenge can be when there are multiple tribes in an area. And, it would be easy if we just had one tribe, like all tribes, there was no overlap, right? Every project just had one tribe to work with. But that's not reality. And um, there's a couple things, right? Like I said, California had a lot of tribes and there was overlap. No peoples have hard and fast boundaries between them. But then also, the way tribes are structured now is a result of history. So there can be a number of tribes that have overlapping areas of interest, and that's just a fact these days. So that can be tricky, especially if they are tribes who don't necessarily get along with each other. Then how we work with them can be challenging. There's no one solution to that situation. Again, it's a case by case basis, and it really stems from again getting to know the tribes and the people within the tribes to find the solution for each situation like that.
Yeah, great insights. Thank you for sharing. There's kind of a follow-up question to that if you want to take this. When engaging with the tribes, are they enthusiastic? Are they do they seem is it a positive, to be involved in these conversations? What's kind of their response to Caltrin's approaches?
It's usually maybe starts with suspicion. Excuse me. That because, like I said, most tribes have not had a good experience with the government and are still distrustful. But one of the important things also is to realize that we're all also individuals. So if I, as an individual working with a tribe and the individuals within that tribe can start to establish a basis of trust, then, and by being honest with my word and following through on what I say I'm going to do and build that trust, then yes, eventually when you have that good relationship established, then there is more, I wouldn't say enthusiasm, but there's definitely more openness, and it's a much more positive relationship when they know that they can trust you. But in the end, we're still there to build road projects, build transportation projects that in all likelihood are affecting Native American sites. So in the end, our reason for being there is essentially a difficult one, right?
Right,
So,
right.
and I can go into that more later.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
we're getting
ahead.
short on time, maybe, though.
I think it's great you closed it with that, because basically, yeah, the biggest challenge we have is that history is ever present. And usually when we go and we initiate contact with a tribe, it's to say, hey, we have this project. It's going to, potentially trench or backhoe or do something through something that you find important, right? I mean, it's just a difficult opener. One of the challenges at the department wide level, in the headquarters level, is really that we have a lot of ways that we can minimize, we have a lot of ways that we can avoid, we have a lot of ways that we can mitigate, and finding ways to implement those is itself a challenge because of the way the state is structured, because of the way the laws that we follow are structured, not just cultural resource laws, but contracting laws and other kinds of laws that we use to try to make up and deal with this, and ameliorate situations, are their own challenge to address and work on. So, I think that history right there makes it quite challenging. Other aspects of just institutional process make it challenging, but that's why these people should have so much pride in what they do. It is not easy, but it is definitely with the goal of benefiting people, as a member of the state. So I take too much time, but I'm glad you ended where you did, Cassandra.
Yeah. And is it all right if I share my screen?
Please do, yes.
I would like to share something. Let's see. This one. Because I think a lot of people, they wonder why does Caltrans need to work with tribes so much? And so I wanted to share this graphic. This is a website hosted by the California Native American Heritage Commission. And what it shows here, let's see, let me move some layers, are the Native American trails over the state routes. So if I turn the trails off, you can see our main roadways. And then when I turn the trails on, you can see how much overlap there is between those Native American trails, which led to villages and places of importance to the tribes, and how much overlap there is. So with the Department of Transportation here, we have a lot of overlap on important tribal places. And that is a huge part of the reason why we have so much tribal engagement. We have a lot of impact on tribal places. So that's what I wanted to share. And while I have my screen up real quick, I'll share this other website that I really like. This one is called nativeland.ca. And you can see here that you can see all the different tribes. This is kind of tribes as we know them. When you zoom way out, this is like a worldwide website. But when you zoom in, you can see tribes as tribal languages as we know them, and that's the toggle I have on. But when I switch it to territories, it gets a lot more. There's a lot more overlap, a lot more there, and that's what I was talking about with the way things have changed historically from the linguistic groups of tribes to what we have now, which is a whole different entity. And it gets really confusing, and there's tons of overlap, and that's because of history. That's the result of colonization. And then if anyone does go to this website, it's fascinating because you can zoom in, you can click anywhere, and it shows you the different tribes links and where all the maps came from. You can dive really deep into it, and it's very interesting. But I will stop there.
Oh, super cool resources. Thank you for sharing those, Cassandra. Yeah, we'll put links to those in the chat, and we'll also send them out in our recording email so everyone can get access to those. Thank you for sharing that. Just given time, Cassandra, I wanted to touch on that because there's a couple questions in the chat related to this question. But we are a large state entity, and how do we work collaboratively as an organization at a statewide level to ensure effective tribal engagement? Kind of what are the tribal partnerships that you and our other Caltrans staff engage in?
Well, one of the requirements of the regulations we're working under that require the consultation is a good faith effort. So that sounds kind of iffy and fuzzy, but there are even definitions of that have gone through the courts. So we first have to identify which tribes to work with, and we have a lot of ways of doing that, including that Native American Heritage Commission that I talked about, and also just learning who the tribal people are in your area. And then we reach out, and early on in the project, we're required to consult throughout the life of the project. So from the very beginning, when the project is initiated, all the way through the end of construction. And we need to keep that dialogue going with the tribes. And for us in our office, we're focusing on the environmental and the cultural concerns. We have that other whole other liaison branch that works with tribes on other efforts, whether it's government to government and transportation, tribal employment rights ordinance. Those things are handled by other folks, but we're focusing on the environmental and the cultural concerns of tribes. So we engage with them through letters to make sure there's documentation of our efforts that we can put into our reports, because we're required to demonstrate we did that consultation. But then also we have meetings. We can of course have a phone call, but I think face-to-face meetings are some of the most valuable, as well as meetings in the field. There is nothing can take the place of being on the ground on one of the projects and having the discussion about what the project will look like as it goes on, and then what it will look like when it's done, and how that might, or hopefully how that might impact sites, or hopefully how we can avoid the impacts. Oh, and then I want to add one more thing, that another crucial component of our interactions with tribes then is during construction, when tribal representatives come out to monitor the projects, because they're there to observe. On the large scale, they're there to observe either the protection or the destruction of a part of their heritage. And that's a really painful thing, right? To see your own heritage with a finite resource. There can never be sites recreated like this again, right? So they are fully finite resources. And to watch those be destroyed can be heartbreaking. It makes me a little emotional right now to think about it. And so tribal monitors are there just to help us ensure that we are not doing more damage than we anticipated. But they're also there to look out for the spiritual side of anything that's found. They often do things that we don't know about as government employees, that we don't know about. They might go to a location beforehand and do some spiritual rituals. They might do that afterwards as well. But certainly during our project, they're there to help mitigate not just physical impacts, but spiritual impacts that occur when destruction comes to these types of sites.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Can I add something?
Please.
So two things that Cassandra mentioned I wanted to add. People don't just take our word that we're doing the outreach. We meticulously track and record all of our outreach efforts, because we do include that information as appendices to our cultural documents, so that we're very certain that we take the steps we're supposed to take, and we do make sure that we can justify that we really have done what we're supposed to do. We don't just assume we did it. We know we did it, and we can prove we did it, and we've taken the steps necessary.
Wonderful. I feel like if we could put a theme on this this episode, it would be partnerships and trust. Like, I think the number of times you guys have said partnership, I couldn't even count them on my fingers and toes. So I love that is really ingrained into the work that you do. Seeing the importance of that collaboration and importance of that representation.
I just thought it was, given the discussion, I thought it was worth pointing out from a bigger picture standpoint that, you know, transportation is such a prominent fixture in all of our lives, and it's such a major factor in terms of safety, economy, land use, equity, environmental protection. So our collective decisions about transportation have, you know, direct and long-lasting implications for all communities, not the least of which includes, you know, Native American tribes and their ancestral homelands. And California is unique compared to other states in the nation. There are about 110 federally recognized tribal governments in the state, as well as dozens more non-federally recognized tribal organizations. And so compared to the rest of the nation, except for maybe Alaska, California has the largest number and diversity of tribes. And you saw that in the maps that Cassandra had shared. So, you know, tribes are important partners and stakeholders in the broader transportation development process. And, you know, for Caltrans, there are over 100 archaeological cultural resource professionals statewide who work in either headquarters or the 12 districts who, you know, have responsibilities to consult with tribes in the context of the cultural resource studies that they're conducting for transportation projects and, you know, compliance with environmental and historic preservation laws. And so they play a significant role in working with tribes to ensure that Caltrans programs and activities avoid and minimize impacts to tribal heritage sites, you know, as much as feasible, and that they duly consider the unique knowledge and expertise that tribes have about their ancestral lands. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of, you know, include that kind of broader perspective on how transportation is such a broad, you know, a big factor in our lives. And so naturally it touches so many things and adds a lot of complexities to, you know, the work that we do.
Thank you for that ad, Sarah. Yeah, that really adds a lot of context for us. So thank you so much. I'm going to kick it to Laura to close us out here, but just know that I know we didn't get to all the questions. There were a lot of questions coming in right at the end as well, and a lot of kudos coming out for the importance of the work that you do. So there's a lot of love coming in the chat for you all. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your dedication and your commitment and your passion. It's very much appreciated. And we will collect all the questions that were in the chat and send those over to our panelists to answer, and we'll try and get those out with the recording for you all as well.
Yeah.
But Laura, I'll kick it over to you to close us out.
Yeah, I just want to add that I did put some links in the chat. If you did see those in there to connect with our panelists. I also added the website that Cassandra was sharing to find out what native land you're on. And yeah, just super happy with everybody showing up today, and so informative, so educational. This webinar, really important work that you guys are doing. We are very honored to have you here today and appreciate it very much. And it has a slide up here. We do have a post survey. If you could just take a moment to give us some feedback on the webinars. And we don't have a webinar for December, but stay tuned because we have a nice lineup starting in January 2025. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much to our panelists. You are absolute experts. And those of you that are tuning in, we put their LinkedIn profiles. Please go ahead and connect with these amazing individuals and learn more, connect, chat. Let's continue these conversations, continue these partnerships. And together we can all continue to make a big difference. So thank you so much. Happy Native American Heritage Month as well. We're all representing.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
much.
for this opportunity.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending as well. And as Laura said, we'll be back in January, so enjoy the holiday break. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.